Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to day 25 of Quran in a Year Plus, where we learn to look at the world and live life according to the lens of the Quran. Today we're going to be looking at verses 231 to 235 of Surah Baqara. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. وإذا طلقتم النساء فبلغن أجلهن فأمسكوهن بمعروف أو سرحوهن بمعروف ولا تمسكوهن ضرارا لتعتدوا ومن يفعل ذلك فقد ظلم نفسه ولا تتخذوا آيات الله هزوا واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم وما أنزل عليكم من الكتاب والحكمة يعظكم به واتقوا الله واعلموا أن الله بكل شيء عليم. When you divorce a woman and they approach the end of their waiting period, you have the right to take them back or to leave them in a good way until their waiting period is over. Do not take them back to oppress and harm them. As was the practice in pre-Islamic times, whoever acts intending to cause harm to them has wronged himself by exposing himself to sin and punishment. Do not make Allah's words the object of mockery and play out of insolence. Remember Allah's favors upon you, the most important of which is the revelation you have received in the form of the Quran and the Sunnah, through which He reminds you through encouragement and warning. Fear Allah by fulfilling His commands and avoiding His prohibitions. Know that Allah knows everything and nothing is hidden from Him, and He will compensate you for your actions accordingly. وَإِذَا طَلَّقْتُمُ النِّسَاءَ فَبَلَغْنَ أَجَلَهُنَّ فَلَا تَعْضُلُوهُنَّ أَن يَنكِحْنَ أَزْوَاجَهُنَّ إِذَا تَرَاضَوْا بَيْنَهُم بِالْمَعْرُوفِ ذَلِكَ يُوعَظُ بِهِ مَن كَانَ مِنكُمْ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ ذلكم أزكى لكم وأطهر والله يعلم وأنتم لا تعلمون. When you divorce women less than 3 times and their waiting period has finished, do not stop them from returning to their husbands with a new marriage contract if they wish to do so in mutual agreement with their husbands. This law prohibiting them from being prevented is a reminder for those among you who have faith in Allah and the Last Day. If you obey, this will bring you greater growth in goodness and is better at keeping your honor and deeds free of impurities. Allah knows the reality and outcome of matters, whereas you do not. والوالدات يرضعن أولادهن حولين كاملين لمن أراد أن يتم الرضاعة وعلى المولود له رزقهن وكسوتهن بالمعروف لا تكلف نفس إلا وسعها لا تضار والدة بولدها ولا مولود له بولده وعلى الوارث مثل ذلك فإن أرادا فصالا عن تراض منهما وتشاور فلا جناح عليهما وإن أردتم أن تسترضعوا أولادكم فلا جناح عليكم إذا سلمتم ما آتيتم بالمعروف واتقوا الله واعلموا أن الله بما تعملون بصير. Mothers who intend to complete the breastfeeding period should nurse their children for 2 full years. The father of the child is responsible for the maintenance and clothing of a divorced mother who breastfeeds her child in accordance with the customs of society, so long as they do not contradict the sacred law. No soul is burdened beyond what it can handle. No parent is allowed to use the child as a means to harm the other. The heir, who would inherit from the child if the child were to pass away, leaving behind wealth, shall be responsible because they are taking the place of the guardian. If the father dies without leaving any wealth, for the same obligation as the fathers. If the parents decide to wean the child before 2 years finish, then there is no sin on them if this is done after mutual consultation and agreement that is indeed in the child's best interest. If you wish to hire wet nurses for your children instead of their mothers, there is no sin in doing so provided you pay the agreed wages of such wet nurses without any shortchanging or delay. Be mindful of Allah by fulfilling His commands and avoiding His prohibitions, and know that Allah sees everything you do and nothing is hidden from Him, and He will reward you accordingly for any deed you do. والذين يتوفون منكم ويذرون أزواجا يتربصن بأنفسهن 4 أشهر وعشرا فإذا بلغن أجلهن فلا جناح عليكم فيما فعلن في أنفسهن بالمعروف والله بما تعملون خبير. For those who pass away and leave behind women who are not pregnant, the widow must wait for a period of 4 months and 10 days, during which she must not leave the husband's home, beautify herself, or get married. Once this period ends, there is no blame on their guardians if these women do these actions, which were previously prohibited during the waiting period, as long as it is done in accordance with societal norms and sacred law. Allah is well aware of what you do. None of your private or public actions are concealed from Him, and He will reward you accordingly. ولا جناح عليكم فيما عرضتم به من خطبة النساء أو أكننتم في أنفسكم علم الله أنكم ستذكرونهن ولكن لا تواعدوهن سرا إلا أن تقولوا قولا معروفا ولا تعزموا عقدة النكاح حتى يبلغ الكتاب أجله واعلموا أن الله يعلم ما في أنفسكم فاحذروه واعلموا أن الله غفور حليم. There is no sin on you if you hint at your desire to propose to a woman who is still in her waiting period after a divorce or after the death of her husband, but without explicitly declaring it. For example, a person may say, "When your waiting period is over, let me know." There is also no sin on you if you keep the desire to marry a woman who is in her waiting period to yourselves. Allah knows that you will mention them because of your strong desire for them, so He has allowed you to give a hint without being explicit. Beware of secretly making any promise to marry them while they are still in their waiting period, except in an acceptable manner. Do not ratify the marriage contract during the waiting period. Know that Allah knows what you are concealing, so be mindful of Him and do not go against His command. Know that Allah forgives the person who repents to Him, and that He is tolerant and does not hasten to punish. Now, once again, Allah highlights different aspects of the relationship when it comes to divorce, in terms of what is permissible and what is not permissible. And if you notice, Allah the Almighty, He mentioned, وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ بَصِيرٌ. And He also mentioned that He is Khabir, and that He knows what you conceal within yourselves. That this is the key, that a person has to be mindful of that Allah knows everything. Allah is always aware. He sees everything. He knows everything. He knows what is deep within my heart. And when the heart is filled with that level of faith in Allah and certainty in the day of judgment, then the reminder has the greatest effect. Because the person knows that Allah is observing them, that Allah is aware of all of that. And they want to seek Allah's pleasure and do that which is right. And Allah also warns that whoever transgresses His limits, whoever does the actions that are prohibited, in reality they are harming themselves. There's no such thing as getting away with it, but a person is harming themselves, they're harming the relationship. And when a person is mindful of Allah and they follow His guidelines, that awareness leads to knowing and understanding that Allah only wants for him what is pure and wholesome. That in following that is benefit for myself. And it motivates us to respond to Allah's commands, to gain purification through that and grow as individuals, for not just myself, but for society as well. And from a mindset perspective, we have to tell ourselves, which will motivate us to willingly and confidently commit to Allah's law, is that we know that Allah is the one who has chosen this path, the one whose knowledge encompasses everything. And in that is what is best for me. And you also notice that the Quran encourages that matters to be built upon consultation and mutual agreement between the husband and wife. That the spirit of the marriage is living with one another in goodness, with mercy, compassion. And Allah gives a framework so that nobody can take advantage of the other person. But part of that is also that there should be mutual consultation and agreement, that dialogue should be there, discussion, to see what is the best course of action for the family. And of course, within the limits that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set. And once again, the nature of relationships, it's difficult. We get frustrated, we get upset, there's resentment built up, but we have to work on that. And that's why it's so important to follow the guidelines of Allah, to learn the necessary skills so that it doesn't come down to that. Because once the ego takes over, then it just wants to do the wrong thing. And we have to understand that when I transgress, when I do wrong, in reality, I am harming myself. And it's never okay to oppress anyone, and that I'm going to be standing in front of Allah one day and He's going to ask me about that. And as we walk away from today's episode, we want to reflect over the statement of Ibn Uthaymeen rahmatullah alayh, where he said that taking admonition from Allah's ruling is a form of purification for the soul. As he said, ذَلِكَ أَزْكَى لَكُمْ, that is pure for you, because it nurtures the soul, strengthens faith, builds character, and elevates manners. The more a person applies Allah's laws, the more purified and elevated they become. So let us try our best to always put Allah's guidance before our own desires. May He make us amongst those who are patient. May He make us amongst those who forgive easily. May He make us amongst those who remain steadfast upon His path. I'll see you tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.